Hey up, it's Steve from the Old Yorkshire Geek, and got a bit of news tonight. Thought I'd do a few stories. So let's just hit the intro and we'll have a look, shall we? Right, I'm back. Right, let's get his news up. If I can find where I've put it. Where is it? There it is. Right, first up from Bounding into Comics. As usual, all the links are in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share the videos, drop a comment, all that stuff. It would be greatly appreciated. And also up there, there's my names for me social medias. I can never remember. Why can't I remember that? It's because I'm old. Names for my social medias, my Twitter, my Facebook, my Instagram. The links for those are also in the description below. So you can interact with me if I can be bothered replying to you, which I probably will. I might not make much sense, but anyway. Right, so first up, Bounding into Comics. There we go. There's the Inquisitor from Tales of the Jedi. Here we go. Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Company accused of using bots to defend shit Star Wars shows. Now, I really enjoyed Tales of the Jedi, but this story, I had a quick scan of it. I didn't read it all the way through, but I had a quick look at it, and it seems to be referring to basically just the first episode, which I admit is the weakest of the lot. And I'd much prefer, to be honest, if it were just 5 episodes, with episodes 2 to 6, ignoring the first episode, because it were pointless. But they wanted to bookend the series with Ahsoka episodes. That's what I think, anyway. So let's have a look. Right, Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Company are being accused of using bots to defend the latest Star Wars series, Tales of the Jedi. Following the release of the first episode, by the way, they've all dropped together, so it's not just the first episode. Disney Star Wars critic Script Trooper shared his reaction, writing on Twitter, "Just finished episode 1 of Tales of the Jedi. Thank you, Dave Jabroni," obviously meaning Dave Filoni, "for yet another law-breaking, nonsensical pile of manure." I don't know it was law-breaking, but it wasn't the best episode. And there's the tweet. Like I said, the first episode's not great, to be honest, but and I can see why he didn't like it. But it wasn't a pile of manure, it just wasn't very good. In response to these criticisms, at least 4 accounts replied with the same exact message. OBELO 8460667. I'm sure that means something. Is it his phone number? I don't know. Or hers. Wrote, "If you want to criticise Tales of the Jedi for contradicting law, there are plenty of examples to choose from. It's beyond me that you picked an episode that doesn't adhere to that criticism. Something hating just to hate something. And there's the tweet. And another account wrote, "If you want to criticise," here we go, Sacred Cow, with the @shitter_k. Anyway, they said exactly the same thing. I think it's exactly the same. It looks to be, and ending with the something. So they've just copy pasted that, haven't they? Or it's a bot. Still another wrote exactly the same thing. This is Spider Mike 12. And Sheev Talks wrote exactly the same thing again with the something. So there you go. So that's 4. Script Trooper would highlight 2 of the replies, writing, "Team-ups are cute." YouTuber and Disney Star Wars critic Kenobi Stig replied to Script Trooper, accusing Lucasfilm and Disney of using bots to defend the show. He wrote, "Disney are using bots to defend their shit shows on Twitter. Busted." And there's the tweet. See, good old Bounded into Comics. Is it John? Is it John F. Trent? Let's have a look. I think it was, wasn't it? Where are we? Yes, it is. He edits himself there. What's the word? That word himself there, but keeps it in the tweet. Interestingly, former Disney CEO Bob Iger recently admitted that he believed a significant portion of Twitter's user base was not real and is indeed made up of bots when Disney was looking to acquire Twitter. That's what Elon Musk has said, hasn't he? During an interview at the 2022 Code Conference, Iger stated, "Interestingly enough, because I read the news these days about it, we did look very carefully at all of the Twitter users. I guess they're called users, and we at that point estimated, with some of Twitter's help, that a substantial portion, not a majority, were not real." When asked how many, he replied, "I don't remember the number, but we discounted the value heavily." It's also not far-fetched to believe that Disney will be employing these bots to protect their brands and try to influence people to watch their shows, buy their products, and more. In August, Emily Sayer, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the CEO of Nitretti, wrote in Forbes, "Bots are making people a lot of money, a lot of power, and a lot of influence." Get some bots my way then, because I ain't got any of that. A perception of influence is very powerful. The influence of fake accounts and fake campaigns can make a man president or keep another from reaching that office. They can ruin reputations of people, groups, companies, and spread lies. These influencers can hype up or hype down crypto markets. They created, or at the very least influenced, the phenomenon of meme stocks. Fortunes can be made or lost on the power of bots. So there you go. He goes on to note, even worse, is Emily a he? Could be, I don't know. You never know these days. Presumably, Emily goes on to note, even worse, and somewhat amazingly, you can buy all of this bot influence for the right price. Oh yes, bot campaigns can be self-built with the right investment, or you can find all the pieces in the seedy underground of the web. Excuse me. The idea that Disney, one of the most powerful corporations on the planet that owns ABC News, ESPN and others, isn't engaging in bot campaigns is hard to believe, especially given the company has made it clear they are completely immoral and indeed are in the business of grooming people. Disney CEO Bob Chapek made that goal abundantly clear back in February when he sent out a company-wide email explaining why the company wasn't openly fighting against a Florida bill that prevented public school teachers and administrators from instructing kindergartners through third grade on gender identity and sexual orientation. He told Disney employees, "I do not want anyone to mistake a lack of a statement for a lack of support. We all share the same goal of a more tolerant, respectful world. Where we may differ is in the tactics to get there." Chapek continued, "And because this struggle is much bigger than any one bill in any one state, I believe the best way for our company to bring about lasting change is through the inspiring content we produce." I don't really know what's that's got to do with bots. He's going on to grooming there, isn't he? And things like that. But anyway, it carries on about grooming. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Disney using bots. And he's going on, this John, about Disney being immoral. Which it is. All corporations are immoral. They're talking about grooming adults as well now. And there we go. So, yeah. But yeah, I suppose all big companies, they will use bots. I'm not condoning it. I don't know if this is bots or just several people just copying and pasting, a post that were done by somebody originally. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. Plus, Tales of the Jedi were really good. Just that first episode were a bit iffy. That's all. The rest of it really good. Really enjoyed it. I wonder what Script Trooper thinks about, episodes 2 to 6, because I thought they were great. I give the series a 9 out of 10, and if it weren't for that first episode, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. So, yeah. Right, moving on. By the way, speaking of bots, how do you get bots to... Can you look up, bot company to promote my website? And are they there? I don't know, because I've never thought about it. Anyway, how James Gunn and Peter Safran landed top spots at DC Studios. I did a short earlier on today about... I'm going to have to move that, aren't I? Move that over a bit. There we go. I did a short earlier today about my opinion about James Gunn being given control of DC TV and movies. And I said, I don't really care. As long as he makes good TV and movies. Who cares if he's in charge or not? Not me. But anyway, let's have a look. Finally, Warner Brothers Discovery boss David Zaslav has a new head of DC Studios, and it's not one but two. Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad filmmaker James Gunn and DC Films producer Peter Safran. I've heard that name somewhere before. I've probably seen it on a film. Both have the new titles of co-chairman and chief executive officers of DC Studios, overseeing the overall creative direction of the DC universe across film, TV, and animation under a single banner. Who's doing the comics? Is that separate now? I don't know. The duo will report to Zaslav, but will also be in close correspondence with Warner Brothers Film Group co-chairs and CEOs Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi on such matters as marketing, distribution and capital spend, just so everyone is on the same page. Gunn and Safran start effective November the 1st. What happened here? Buzz was intense that Safran was going to get the job last week in the wake of former DC Films president Walter Hamada departing the studio. Then insiders told us that wasn't true. That the first look deal for the Safran company announced last week was just a re-up. Turns out that Safran didn't want to run DC alone unless there was a creative face, that being his Peacemaker and Suicide Squad partner, Gunn. Apparently the pair became even more serious contenders for the job as they were advising Zaslav on candidates, one of those previously being Warner Brothers veteran and Lego movie producer Dan Lin. So they were... They were advising him on candidates, saying, oh, he'd be good in the job, but really they were saying, we want the job. Anyway, in his new role, Gunn is exclusive to Warner Brothers Discovery DC, no more Marvel. He can only direct TV series and movies for Warner Discovery DC. Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes out via Disney Marvel on May the 5th, 2023. There's also a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special hitting Disney+. The model Zaslav and DeLuca were eyeing here in Gunn Safran for the new DC label was one akin to Disney's Pixar, where there is a creative and business face. Well, what happened to Pixar? Is that still going on at Pixar? I've no idea, because Disney Pixar films are not special anymore, are they? They used to be, but they're not anymore. Not in my opinion. Meanwhile, the Safran Company will continue to be run by its president of production, John Rickard, I don't know. They have several projects in the mix inside and outside Warner's DC, including the Idris Elba, John Cena action feature Heads of State in the works at Amazon Studios. While Lin was a serious candidate, we hear he asked Zaslav for too much. Some insiders say that untangling Lin from his deal at Universal, which had a financing component, was hard, but others say it wasn't that complicated. Talk simply fell apart. Safran was an easier get for Zaslav, given that he had a first look deal already in place at Warner Brothers. Gunn and Safran will work closely together with names. Zaslav is looking for a new head of Warner Brothers Animation, the third feature bucket alongside Warner Brothers Motion Pictures and DC that he outlined when taking on the new conglomerate. Development insiders at the studio are excited. The prospect of gearing up writer's room or whatever, under Gunn is a luring prospect for talent and scribes. In their new roles, Gunn and Safran will spearhead the development and execution of a long-term plan for the many properties licensed from DC Comics, focused on continuing the tradition of DC storytelling across all mediums while building up a sustainable growth business out of the franchise. Then it goes on to do what they've done before, Conjuring, Shazam, Suicide Squad, blah, 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 Aquaman, etc. Not produced by Safran, but definitely DC, is the Ezra Miller starring The Flash. Yeah, that's going to be a massive hit, isn't it? You never know. And then they go on, saying we're going to do our best and we're great, we're honoured to be stewards, etc. The usual platitudes. We couldn't be more excited. Platitudes. Duck Bill platitudes. Sorry, it just popped in my head. And that's about it, really. That's the ton about. DC had a #1 film this past weekend with The Black Adam, which saw The Rock's act as best box office start as a solo star, with a first frame of 67 million, domestic 140 million worldwide. So anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. As long as they make good, entertaining stuff that isn't preaching. Gunn generally doesn't preach, does he? I mean, you've seen the Suicide Squad, haven't you? And the Peacemaker. You can't say that's preachy, can you? Not overtly, anyway. So we'll see how he goes. Right. Since it's Halloween, I thought I'd read this one from Den of Geek. How Hollywood changed werewolf law forever. Hollywood wasn't exactly the first to connect the Wolfman and the full moon, but they were the first to codify it. Am I going to have to move this again? I am, aren't I? Moving things backwards and forwards. There we go. By the way, that's from the Wolfman. What's his name now? Benicio del Toro. I need to say Guillermo del Toro. Are they related? I don't know. Benicio del Toro starring film, directed by Joe Johnson, and it's one of my. I can't call it a guilty pleasure because I think it's a really good film. I really do. So that's from there anyway. Beware the moon, lads. 2 young Americans are told by a cranky pub regular in an American Werewolf in London. He's told that by Brian Glover, the late, great Brian Glover. Beware the moon, lads. God go with you. Alas, the summer break tourists were with sheep shit in their backpacks, did not stick to the roads, and instead crossed the moors beneath a full moon. I mean, we've watched it, haven't we? American Werewolf in London, and you can see where they go off the road, and I bet you've said, "You're going off the road, you silly buggers." After all, that guy sounded crazy, but by the movie's end, who's howling now? Horror movies make lycanthropes out to be lunatics, but only during certain moments of the lunar cycle. Why does the Wolfman have to wait for a full moon to change, though? There are werewolves reading this who are hungry now. Even A-list actors like Jack Nicholson, Michael J. Fox, Benicio del Toro, James Spader, and Taylor Lautner have to make monthly reservations. Oh yeah, we're in. I think James Spader were in the film Wolf with Jack Nicholson, Monty. Have to make monthly reservations to dine on the innocent in their hairiest roles. It seems unlikely that the full moon catalyst started with Lon Chaney Jr.'s Larry Talbot in The Wolfman, 1941. He's not even the first person to howl at the moon in that classic movie. The first werewolf in the film is Bela Lugosi, who transforms into the Black Wolf, who puts the bite on Chaney's pioneering pack leader. But was he the first? As Lou Costello says in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, 1948, Talbot and 20 million other guys are going to turn into a beast when the moon is full. I think, was it 1940, or The Werewolf of London? I think that were out before The Wolfman. I think it was a bit before The Wolfman. It's a good film anyway, The Werewolf of London. He wears a hat. Chaney sat for hours in the makeup chair to change into the iconic Universal Pictures monster, and he transformed our modern concept of werewolves while doing it. Sorry, I've got giggles now. I'm thinking of a werewolf in a hat. But he wasn't the first to feel the lunar effects on his psyche and physique on film or off. Werewolf lore goes back a long way, according to the Wolfman's knowledgeable antique shop owner. Even Little Red Riding Hood was a werewolf story. Have you seen The Company of Wolves? Excellent film. But even the biggest ears heard nothing about a full moon in the cautionary fairy tale or anywhere else specifically. The moon shines all over werewolf literature and legend, sometimes full but usually unspecified and somewhat distanced. The truth is legends tying werewolves to the full moon are sporadic and often far apart, with lycanthropes finding plenty of other reasons to go furry in our ancient superstitions. It took motion pictures to move the shapeshifters and the moon together permanently. It's only an autumn moon. Oh, my God. Let me just that a bit, move that up a bit, because there we go. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. I think they changed it, didn't they, to the moon is full and bright, didn't they, I think. Down the line, Claude Rains's Sir John Talbot reminds his son Larry of these words in The Wolfman. The autumn moon in Sir John's poem is also the one overt reference in that film to lunar superstition involving werewolves. In its own way, it shows how the concept of werewolves and full moons was still in flux even in 1941, with Larry transforming every night of pumpkin season. But consider that 6 years earlier, Universal released another werewolf picture, The Werewolf of London. See, I thought it was 1935, where the titular character was initially transformed by a full moon. But that movie was never as popular as The Wolfman, hence no sequels. It's a good film, though. You should check it out. The New York Times bestseller from which it likely got the idea for its title, Guy Endor's The Werewolf of Paris, published in 1933. In that book, a man was literally born bad, cursed to transform when his urges got too wild. Got the urge. What have we heard that in now? I can't remember. All of these early 20th century stories reveal what was a then undecided contradiction in the canon of modern werewolf lore. The only thing consistent was its bad news to become one such beast, as Maria Uspenskaya's old Romany woman famously warned in The Wolfman. But then Romanian folklore has a richer tradition of werewolves than vampires, which goes back centuries. The stories of men turning into beasts caught the imagination of the peasants, who held ceremonies to repel the lupine shapeshifters called Varkolak in Romanian cities, but how do you pronounce that? Pricciolici in the deep dark woods. I don't know. I'm not Romanian. The autumn moon. Hang on, let me move that down a little bit more. There we go. The autumn moon of the Universal film resembles the Night of the Wolf, which was celebrated on the eve of the Feast of St. Andrew, which is now the Romanian Orthodox patron saint of Romania. While the country was still pagan, superstitious villagers in the Apuseni Mountains believe anyone bitten by a wolf on this night would turn into a werewolf, according to the 2012 book Transylvania by Lucy Mallows and Rudolph Abraham. Peasants would hang garlic on doors. The werewolves of ancient Greece, Rome, and beyond. Very good. At first glance, this don't go on too long. At first glance, it does seem like the full lunar curse of the werewolf begins with Universal monster movies. Historian Daniel Ogden might agree. In his book, The Werewolf in the Ancient World, he quotes an expert saying, "The motif of the full moon is a modern invention, since historical sources do not mention it as an instigator of metamorphosis. Larry Talbot's story plays out like a Greek tragedy. His flaw is arrogant disbelief." Hang on. And as it turns out, lycanthropy comes from the Greek word lycanthropos, which means wolf man, although the concept goes back further. The first literary reference to a wolf transformation comes in the Epic of Gilgamesh. A king at Uruk. Star Trek reference there. From around 2100 BCE. Just call it BC. King Gilgamesh refuses to marry the goddess Ishtar, who warns him of her former lovers Isolanu, who she turned into a mole, and Tammuz, who she turned into a wolf. Herodotus's Histories, written around 430 BC, describes a tribe of magicians known as the Nuri, who transformed into wolves once every year. Plato's Republic from 380 BC includes a line from the character Socrates about a legend claiming he who tastes of the one bit of human entrails minced up with those of other victims is inevitably transformed into a wolf. That's very specific, isn't it? The initial lunar conjunction appears to begin with the Roman poet Ovid, who, in 8 AD, CE, they can't call it, because they call it CE, common era, they can't call it AD, Anno Domini, to do with Jesus and all that, because you might upset people, for God's sake. Anyways, 8 AD work, Metamorphosis. I think the comic 2000 AD might not have done quite as well if it were called 2000 CE, would it? Or if they changed it halfway through its run. And it's still called 2000 AD to this day. Metamorphoses makes an association between the moon and the werewolf. In Book 7, the character Medea, granddaughter of the sun god and good friend of Jason and of the Argonauts, she was portrayed by the lovely Nancy Kovac in Jason and the Argonauts film, is making a rejuvenating potion to which she adds frosts, which were collected under the all-night moon, the notorious wings of the screech owl, together with its flesh, and the entrails of the shape-shifting wolf, which changes its wild animal form into man. The connection between the all-night moon and the shape-shifting wolf is a small detail in the story, much longer in the tooth, and doesn't necessarily mean a full moon. In Greek mythology, one of the most prevalent stories, which is oft retold, concerns King Lycaon, which is, of Arcadia, hence the word lycanthrope. Oh, there you go. Some historians believe Lycaon founded the city Lycosura, the Lycaean Zeus cult, and the tradition of the Lycaean games. Is it Lycaean or Lycian? I don't know. But he is most renowned as mythology's first wolfman because he played a game on Zeus, trying to disprove the Almighty One's all-knowingness. Lycaon roasted up one of Zeus's own sons and served it to the father of the gods to test his discerning tastes. The gods turned Lycaon into a wolf as punishment for his arrogance. The story is recounted by Roman philosopher Pliny the Elder, or is it Pliny, whose 77 AD book, Natural History, also mentions an annual event in Arcadia which further confirms man-to-wolf transformation tales. The section tells the story of a young athlete named Damarcus, who is chosen to sacrifice a young boy and eat his entrails. A lot of entrail eating going on back then. An act believed to bring on lycanthropy. Afterwards, he strips, leaving his clothes on an oak tree, and swims across a marsh, where he transforms into a wolf and joins a pack for 9 years. The connection can also be found in the Satyricon by Petronius, 63 AD. In it, the nouveau riche character, Gaius Pompeius Trimalchio, Maecenationus, recounts a strange incident he witnessed involving a brave soldier. The moon shone like high noon, he remembers. We got among the tombstones. I sat down with my heart full of song and began to count the graves. Then when I looked round at my friend, he stripped himself and put all his clothes by the roadside. My heart was in my mouth, but I stood like a dead man. He made a ring of water around his clothes and suddenly turned into a wolf. While a very interesting encounter, the high moon is still not specifically a full moon. By the light of the silvery moon and the Middle Ages. How long is this going for? We're nearly done. Are we getting there? Oh, it does. Oh no, we're nearly there. Right. While the ancient stories do not specifically link werewolves with the full moon, other archaic schools of thought brought the connection closer together. Greek philosophers, including Aristotle, believed the brain was influenced by the moon, similar to tides, because it is the organ with the most water. Ancient Romans believed, erroneously, that wolves howled at the moon. Wolves hunt in packs and howl to confuse their prey or to warn about danger. The moon is not a danger to wolves. The moon makes many appearances in G.W.M. Reynolds' 1847 Gothic fiction novel, Wagner the Werewolf, but it is usually a comforting or even protective presence, giving light to nighttime terrors. Bad things happen when the moon and stars are veiled. In the novel, an old man from the Black Forest of Germany makes a deal with an impatient stranger. He is offered youth, wealth and wisdom, but he must throw off the human shape and take that of a ravenous wolf. He must spend 18 months preying upon the human race whom he hates, as well as I, says the stranger, Dr. Faustus, claiming the old man's dark servitude. The full moon rises more specifically in medieval literature and the werewolf in the ancient world. Ogden cites Gervase of Tilbury, not Ricky Gervais, who mentions men changing into wolves every lunar month. In his encyclopedia, Otia Imperialia, 1214, According to Ogden's translation, one of the characters parts company from all his friends when the moon is full, lays his clothes under a bush or secluded rock, and then rolls naked in the sand for a long time until he takes on the shape and veracity of a wolf, gaping for prey with wide open mouth and yawning jaws. This does not, however, prove the man changed into the wolf because the moon was full, but it is the first reference which implies a pattern. And he also put his clothes tidily to one side, much like the person further up the story did, hung it on an oak tree, didn't they? got to keep your clothes where you can find them, haven't you, when you turn back into a human. The Middle Ages are closer than the ancient world in explaining our modern understandings of werewolf superstition, but even then, one of the more famous texts written on the subject, the French poem Bisclaveret, or Bisclavret, it's not French, which translates to The Werewolf, was a story written down in the 12th century, and in that tale a baron in Brittany is cursed to turn into a werewolf 3 days of the week, every week, be it a full moon or not. Alas, the popular lord is eventually condemned to eternal wolfdom when his wife discovers his secret and steals his clothes after one of his transformations so he can never return to human form. See? That's what I've just said. You've got to keep your clothes in a safe place, haven't you? So why can't he ever change back if she's just nicked his clothes? He's that embarrassed. Just go find some other clothes. Conversely, other medieval and early modern sources listed the full moon as one of many ways one can get caught with a werewolf's curse, with one Germanic superstition suggesting you could be cursed to werewolfdom if you slept outside beneath a full moon, but only on certain Wednesdays or Fridays during the summer season. You have to keep... No, there'll be notices, won't there? No sleep on Wednesdays and Fridays. No sleeping on Wednesdays and Fridays. Still, the most popular superstition by the early modern period was that werewolves were men who made a pact with Satan. Dun dun dun! Early English publisher Richard Rowlands even wrote in 1628 that werewolves were sorcerers who anointed their bodies with an ointment which they make by the instinct of the devil. Werewolves were always universal. Myths about animal shapeshifters can be found all around the world, featuring the predominant natural threat to the area. In Asia, early mythology includes stories about were-tigers, were-jaguars, make an appearance in South American tales. African legends tell of were-hyenas, and include a legend of a man who could transform into a lion. In early Nordic folklore, the saga of the Volsungs tells the story of a wolf pelt, which could make warriors go feral for battle, turning them into wolves for 10 days. Sound like berserkers, don't they? For the record, this became the impetus for the cult. For the cult of Ulfhunir, who were Viking berserkers, warriors who thought they derived power from wolf pelts and drugs, and can be seen dramatised in the movie The Northman. Yeah, it just reminded me of that. Actually. As I said it, I had an image of Alexander Skarsgård at the beginning of that film, going on his rampage through that village. Oh, crikey. The Loup-Garou werewolf in upstate New York is a mixture of First Nation beliefs and stories told by French settlers. Louisiana's swamp-dwelling Cajun werewolf mixes the traits of Canadian and French folklore and can be a fox as often as a wolf. In many places in the US, the first full moon in January is called the wolf moon, going back to indigenous people who heard howls on cold winter nights, according to the Farmer's Almanac. Many tribes saw the wolf as a protective spirit with wisdom. The mythology of the Fox tribe of what is now Wisconsin tells of a spirit god, Wisakachek, who took the form of a wolf. Hopi traditions include shape-shifting ceremonies. Here we go. The most famous shapeshifter legend comes from the Navajo culture, the Skinwalker, called a Naldushi. I've probably said that all wrong, is a witch who can possess an animal or transform into one. Sadly, all prints of the very first werewolf movie ever made were destroyed in a fire in 1924. The Werewolf, an 18-minute film from 1913, followed a Navajo witch who teaches her daughter how to transform into a wolf. The transformation sequence was a camera dissolving between the actor and a real wolf. The film was distributed by Universal Pictures, which also released the first commercial Hollywood box office lycanthrope film, Werewolf of London, in 1935, and later The Wolfman Pictures. Why would it destroy the fight in 1924? Well, I mean, if it were released by, I don't know. Yeah, the film was distributed by Universal Pictures, so did they get every copy back then? I mean, surely there must be another copy out there somewhere. If it were distributed, across the country, there must be one knocking about somewhere in somebody's cellar or attic. Anyway, pseudoscience teaches that the full moon brings out periods of inanity. Does that mean insanity? Periods of inanity are my videos. They're inane, aren't they? Or at least strange behaviour. Even William Shakespeare's Othello, I think the writer of this article were getting tired at this point. Even William Shakespeare's Othello is warned how men are driven insane when the moon draws too close to the earth. The lunar lunacy effect, or Transylvania effect, was a common belief in medieval Europe. According to Scientific American, I'm getting tired. According to Scientific American, which concludes gravitational effects of the moon are far too minuscule to generate any meaningful effects on brain activity, let alone behaviour. True science finds most cases of lycanthropy can be diagnosed as hypertrichosis, an extremely rare condition which causes abnormal hair growth all over the body. There have been less than 200 documented cases in medical history. Equally rare, clinical lycanthropy has neurological roots, as neuroimaging found unusual activity in the areas of the brain associated with body shape perception in case studies. The five-pointed mark of the werewolf is open to many interpretations, from the protective talismans of folk superstitions through scholarly pagans and Christian crusaders to Sufi soothsayers and the Jewish Star of David. That's 6 points. But no one puts old world legends together like old Hollywood. They invented the idea of werewolves creating other werewolves by biting other people, copying it from the vampire myths, and infecting zombies with it later. Indeed, if one were to probably point to one movie that really solidified the idea of full moons transforming werewolves in the popular imagination, it wasn't even The Wolfman. It was the sequels, beginning with Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, 1943, where old Sir John's poem is subtly refined to end with "When the moon is full and bright," as I said at the beginning of this article. That was the first Cheney werewolf movie to include images of the full moon, and Universal kept running with it until multiple generations were raised on their Tinseltown superstitions. The Greeks can say whatever they want, but millions of Americans saw on their late-night televisions for decades what makes a werewolf. The full moon's effect on the werewolf would have been a minor note if it weren't for the movies. Hollywood didn't exactly make it up. It just put it together for the silver screen, the only silver which empowers a werewolf. Yeah, because silver kills a werewolf, don't forget. Silver bullet, silver gun, silver dust, I don't know. But not the silver screen. The silver screen empowers them. So very good. An interesting article. I say I like werewolves. I think werewolf films are my favourite kind of horror films. Right, finally. Speaking of... hang on. Where are we? Just adjust that slightly. Move that down a bit. Right, speaking of Tales of the Jedi, we're back to it again. Why Yaddle doesn't talk like Yoda in Star Wars canon. Star Wars has finally confirmed that Yaddle does not have the same speech pattern as Yoda, despite them being from the same species. But why? And there's Yaddle from Phantom Menace. Not looking very well there, is she? But then again, the original Yoda looked a bit iffy, didn't he, in Phantom Menace? I think it was Phantom Menace, wasn't it, that we saw Yaddle in? It wasn't Attack of the Clones, was it? I think it was Phantom Menace. Right. Yes. Star Wars Tales of the Jedi has offered a better look at Yaddle. By the way, spoilers for Tales of the Jedi. I did my review. I told you, didn't I? Never mind. Go watch it. Star Wars Tales of the Jedi has offered a better look at Yaddle than all Star Wars movies combined, revealing that Yaddle does not speak like Yoda in the process. She doesn't talk like, Dooku, going to the dark side you are. She don't talk like that. She talks normally. While Ahsoka and Count Dooku were the focus of the Tales of the Jedi Season 1, the prospect of seeing Yaddle as an actual character rather than a background Jedi was one of the most exciting things about the anthology series. I won't go that far, but it was good to see her doing something. Before Grogu, Yaddle, the mysterious Jedi Master spotted in Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, was the only other character from Yoda's species in the Star Wars canon. However, Yaddle didn't have a single line in The Phantom Menace, leading to much speculation about the character's nature and background. Yaddle had a presence in the Star Wars expanded universe, but when it comes to George Lucas's Star Wars canon, The Phantom Menace was all there. Was about the character. Fortunately, Tales of the Jedi revisits Yaddle as part of Count Dooku's backstory. Yaddle was voiced by longtime Star Wars collaborator Bryce Dallas Howard, and unlike many had theorised, Yaddle did not have the same speech pattern as Yoda. One possible explanation as to why Yaddle doesn't speak like Yoda is that Yoda is much older than Yaddle, meaning that his species' speech pattern may have changed between generations. The more likely explanation, however, is that Star Wars wants to keep Yoda as special and mysterious as possible, meaning that Yaddle shouldn't answer all the questions an audiences have about Yoda. As such, there are both narrative and practical reasons why Yaddle doesn't speak like Yoda. As with many Star Wars characters, both from the original trilogy and the prequels, Yaddle was further explored in the old expanded universe now known as Legends. However, considering how different Yaddle's death in Tales of the Jedi, was compared to Legends, it does not seem like Star Wars plans to borrow a lot from Yaddle's Legend stories. One major difference between Legends Yaddle and canon Yaddle is that the former used the same speech pattern as Yoda in Legends, obviously. It's important to remember George Lucas never considered the expanded universe canon to his Star Wars, but he did, encourage people to add to it. It's not like Disney who cancelled it. Anyway, meaning that those decisions were taken by a different team and not Lucas. Therefore, the fact that Yaddle never spoke in The Phantom Menace left the door open for the expanded universe authors to assume Yaddle would speak just like Yoda. From Grogu in The Mandalorian to Yaddle in Tales of the Jedi, Star Wars continues to keep Yoda and Yaddle's species a mystery. In fact, the mystery of Yoda and Yaddle's species traces back to the Star Wars expanded universe. Given how the expanded universe stories would create a large amount of lore for almost every character or location in the Star Wars universe, the lack of information on Yoda's home planet or young years was always surprising. George Lucas reportedly made Yoda's species an off-limits topic for the expanded universe, which makes sense given how Lucas himself never explained where Yoda and Yaddle came from in his Star Wars movies. From the manifestation of the Wills to the very first Jedi, there are many theories that try to explain where Yoda, Yaddle and Grogu come from and why are they so powerful in the Force. Given how the only 3 Star Wars characters from that species are Force sensitives, it's safe to assume Master Yoda's species has some sort of special connection to the Force. However, as proven by Yaddle's speech pattern in Star Wars Tales of the Jedi, anything else about Yoda might have to do with the ancient Jedi Master only and not with his species as a whole. So when we start hearing Grogu speak, he probably won't be speaking like Yoda. He'll probably be speaking like some, a teenager going like, "Whoa, dude!" That's what he'll be talking like. "Whoa, get to use the Force, man." That's more like a bloody stoner, isn't it? I don't know what kids talk like. Anyway, that's your lot for today. We've done for today. This was supposed to be a quick and 4 stories, but that werewolf article strung it out a bit, didn't it? And 43 bloody minutes we're in. Anyway, so we'll leave it there. But as I said, I've done a review of Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. Really enjoyed it. Check out my review. I did it earlier on today. But we'll leave it there. So, Wherever you are in the universe, look after each other. And until next time, I'll say thee.